Alright guys, today we're making a video over how to make jam in eggs Benedict. So we're going to start off with our jam. I've just got some raspberry, blackberries, some strawberries, a couple lemons, some sugar, some salt, and a pot. And that's all we're going to need to make our fresh jam. Alright, so for our first part of making jam, we're just going to take some raspberries. We're going to put probably about half of these in here. We're going to take our blackberries, and you know what, I'm going to go ahead and just put all those in there. And then we're going to cut our strawberries. It's not really like a perfect size. I'm just going to take the green off the top and then just cut them in half. And that's all we're going to do. We're just going to throw them in our pot with our raspberries and blackberries. Pot, we've got all of our strawberries, raspberries, blackberries up in here. So our next step is going to be to put our sugar and our lemon juice in, a little bit of salt. So technically what you're supposed to do is it's supposed to be the same weight in fruit is the same weight in sugar. So 1 part versus 1 part. So if I do a pound of fruit, pound of sugar. 2 pounds of fruit, 2 pounds of sugar. I'm just going to go ahead and just pour some sugar in. I pretty much just do enough to make sure everything's nice and coated in there. So we're gonna put some in, stir it around, kind of see how it looks, if it looks right or whatnot. I want everything just kind of nice, coated. And you'll be able to kind of add more too. You don't necessarily want like loose sugar all around, but what this is essentially going to do is all this sugar starting the fruit is going to start seeping out all the moisture in the fruit. It's going to just start sucking it out, because we're not going to really add any more liquid in here other than lemon juice. And you're going to see we're going to have plenty of liquid by the time you put this thing on the heat. So after we get our sugar and our lemon juice in, we're actually just going to let it sit by itself off the heat for like 15 minutes and let the sugar and salt do its thing, and let's let it absorb out all the moisture that's in here. Alright, so I'm going to start diving into kind of the eggs Benedict a little bit. It's a very technical dish, one that still kind of intimidates a lot of experienced chefs, more because of the logistics it takes to actually produce it in a fully functioning restaurant. It's a hard dish to pull off in a restaurant setting. Much easier at home, where you can just focus on the one thing. You don't have several different things going on. So one thing about when you're doing your hollandaise sauce for your Benedict, it's all about your cooking method. Now we're going to put our egg yolks in this bowl, and we're going to separate the egg whites. And what we don't want to have happen is we don't want to cook our hollandaise sauce on direct heat, which I'll show you later as we're going through. I have a double boiler set up, which will be this bowl in a pot with some water in it, and that's how we're going to cook our eggs Benedict. You never want to go on straight heat because you'll end up scrambling the bottom of them and not having that nice kind of like smoothie, like kind of creamy texture from eggs Benedict. You'll have more of like a hard, chunky eggs Benedict, and nobody wants that. Alright, so like I said, we're just going to separate egg yolks and egg whites. Not a lot of people separate things differently. Some do the egg method like this, where they go back and forth. Me personally, I just like to pop it open, throw it in my hand, let it run out, and be done with it. So, alright, so the next we're going to squeeze in our lemon juice into our egg yolks. Now I've talked about this in a prior video about the difference between using lemon juice and fresh lemons. This is another instance where lemon juice is not going to give you what you want. You're going to want to go with fresh lemons, simply because they have more acidity than lemon juice, which will help, because we're going to partially cook our egg yolks before we ever touches heat with acidity. Just kind of like how we did with the aioli for the, actually, you know what, I might just do one. It's kind of a big lemon. Half a squeeze. Don't even need a full squeeze on that. So like the same thing, kind of like our aioli, we're going to whisk this up until it becomes a nice, more of a vibrant yellow. So once it kind of starts to get more vibrant-y, if that's even a word, I'm not even sure if that's a word. But once the color starts to turn a little bit, and we got it nice and mixed up, that's when we'll be ready for our next step. So it's been about 15 minutes since we had the sugar and the lemon juice to our fruit. We just let it sit. As you can see, there's all this liquid, all this loose liquid that's starting to go on here. And more of that will continue to seep out as we put it to the heat. But for now, we're at the good spot where we can actually put this on our burner. And we're gonna put it on a low setting because we just want it to sit and kind of simmer. The whole time we're doing everything else, we're gonna let this simmer and reduce down. And as it gets hot and cooks down and starts to break down some of these fruits, we'll then end up being able to mash them. And all that mash and pulp we create from this will make a nice, consistent jam. So when you're doing this though, you wanna make sure that you kind of get the consistency of the jam you want before you kind of pull it off the heat, because it's not gonna change a whole lot once it's done. So here we have just our lemon juice and our egg yolks. Now when you're doing this, you'll end up being able to kind of feel it get thicker. It's not as runny as it once was. The yellow's coming out a bit more. Everything's thoroughly incorporated and mixed in. So we're almost at the part where we can start getting it on the heat. Alright, so checking in on our jam. You can see all this moisture comes out from the fruit as it cooks. And like I said, we're just gonna let this simmer until it reduces all the way down. Alright, so next we're gonna start our hollandaise sauce. So we still have our eggs over here, the lemon juice that we mixed up, and now we're gonna start actually cooking them. So this is my double boiler. So it's got water that's boiling underneath, and we're gonna put the glass just right on top of it. And so the key here is you don't want the egg yolks to sit at the bottom because they'll start to scramble. I was like, you really want to keep moving them around, agitating them, and you're gonna keep doing this until this begins to thicken up because it's starting to cook. It's gonna thicken up a little bit. And don't be afraid, like I'll go off the heat. On the heat, you really want to control the temperature here. Too hot and they'll scramble, too cold and they won't cook. So we'll do this. This will probably take, a few minutes, probably 5 minutes or so of doing off on the heat, maybe less. Like I said, you really want to keep it moving. You just don't want it to sit by itself. You don't want it to sit and start to scramble at the bottom. So we got that going. Still got our jam sitting back here simmering. Over here I've got half water, half vinegar, getting up the temp to poach our eggs in. And so as you can see, it's gotten a little bit thicker. See how you can start to spool down the edges there. It's starting to get thicker. So we're actually about to pull this off the heat and go to our next step. Meanwhile, we still have the jam going. We got some bacon going. Still got a poachable water heating up for us to poach eggs in. Looks like this right here. See, it's a little thick, nice, whisked in. Now we're ready to start adding our butter and some of our salt, a little cayenne for a little kick. All right, so now we're ready to start adding our butter to our egg mix. So you want to use melted butter, and don't be worried, because when you add this butter, a lot of times this will actually start to thicken up even more and more, and it might end up becoming too thick, like mine's already doing right now. You want to do a little bit at a time, just make sure you get it all incorporated. Like mine's starting to get too thick, and I'll show you how to fix that as we're going on. So I've got roughly, with my 6 eggs, 6 egg yolks I started off with, I've got roughly 2 pounds of butter melted. Mixing that in. This honestly might not even be enough butter. I'll have to taste it and see at the end. So what I'm tasting for is to make sure that the sauce isn't too eggy, meaning it doesn't taste too much like eggs. You really want it to be more buttery and lemony than eggy. I'm gonna go ahead and pour the rest of this. Actually, I don't think I will need to add any more water to this. It's actually because of the impurities. Yeah. See that's right here, that's actually, it's a little too thin. And that happened because I ended up using the impurities from the butter. So when you make clarified butter, you melt your butter, you'll see how it separates at the bottom. You'll have good fat up top and all the like little components they add to keep the butter solid and stuff at the bottom. So usually, traditionally, you don't add any of these, what we call impurities, into it. They'll do what I just did, which is make it a little bit too thin, which is okay because I can still fix it. Yeah, as far as flavor goes, it's good. So to fix that, I'm actually going to put it back on the heat for just a little bit longer. Alright, so our butter's in, and I put it back on the double boiler just for a little bit, kind of thicken it up. It was a little bit too runny. This is kind of where we want it. We want the sauce to be not watery thin, but not super thick. You want it just to be able to kind of just let it run off, yeah, like that. And still what's called nappe, it's Italian, but it pretty much means that the sauce sticks on the spoon like this, even after. It doesn't all just run off, it sticks, coats it. It's called nappe. So now that we got our sauce right, now I'm just going to add a couple seasonings. I'm not going to go too crazy on it. I want to keep it pretty simple, so I'm just going to add some salt. Of course, always got to have salt. A little bit of cayenne, because you know how much I love my spice. So I always love to put a little bit of kick in there. Yeah. Let's keep going. Back to salt. Give that a whisk around and see how it tastes. I'm gonna go a little bit more salt. A little bit more cayenne. Actually, a little, let's go with some just regular ground pepper in there. Give that a whisk around and see what we got now. That's it. That's good. Okay, our next part, we got our hollandaise sauce. Our jam's still working. I'll pan to that in a second. You can see it. We've got a little bit of bacon cooked off to go for our eggs Benedict. I know it's traditionally served with like Canadian ham, but I already had bacon and I needed to use it for something before it goes bad. So I'm going to use it for the Benedict instead. And our next thing is we're going to poach eggs. So poaching eggs, what really is poaching eggs? So poaching eggs is cooking eggs in water and vinegar around a temperature of like 130 degrees or so. And you want to cook the egg whites on the outside, but not cook the egg yolk in the middle. So what I've got here is right here. See how we're starting to have all these bubbles form up around. That means we're almost about ready to start poaching our egg. You don't want boiling water. You want the water to be, you know, kind of more like a low simmer like this. So we'll pan over to our jam. Our jam has been reducing now for quite a while. As you can see, it's starting to look like jam. During the process, I would just occasionally stir it around, kind of crush up some of the bits of fruit as they soften up here and there. And honestly, we're about ready to, you know what, I think I'm gonna go ahead and cut the heat off on this. There we go. I'm just gonna cut the heat and let it sit in the pan and let it do its thing. And by the time we're ready to eat, this jam should be ready to go. Alright, so we're getting ready to actually poach our egg. When I poach my poachable water, it is half water, half just regular white distilled vinegar. The vinegar, the acidity from the vinegar helps you cook the egg whites and still leave those kind of egg yolks uncooked. I mean, they're cooked, but they're still runny. I should say, really. So there's a lot of different methods people do for this. Some people like try to put it in a thing and lower it in. I don't know what that's all about. I like to do it like a lot of people do, and that's put my spoon in and give the tornado effect. And I'll show you what I'm talking about here in a second. Also, one more trick that I do a lot is right before I go to start poaching my eggs, I have the good water. All that moving around with the water and stirring it and dropping the egg in is going to lower the temperature of the water. So I end up turning up the heat right before I start dropping my eggs in. That way I can keep the water being around that poachable temp and not it going too cold. So right here, we are ready to rock. We're not quite boiling. Bubbles are starting to come up. We're getting there. So we're going to give our water a stir. I'm going to try to do this with one hand while I film. I need to get a phone tripod or something to help me out. So we're going to stir. Grab our egg. Pop that sucker in. And the minute I pop them in, see that? I'm going to start trying to form my kind of barrier around. You don't want it to just stuck to the bottom. Just kind of gently move it around. Gently move it around. Let it start doing its thing. And you want to kind of tell the egg what direction to go. Yeah. Now, just gonna be patient and sit. Let it do its thing. One thing you want to avoid while the egg is actually poaching is you don't want your water to start boiling on you as you're doing this. You want to be gentle with it. And so sometimes like I'll end up playing with the heat. Like right now, I'm at 8 out of 9 because, like I said, I turn it up right before I drop it in. But I'm gonna lower it right now back down to like a 5 or 6 to keep it from boiling on me. Alright, so here we have like our poached egg. I usually check by giving it kind of a feel, and the egg yolk still feels runny, but over here where these egg whites are, it feels nice and solid. So that's kind of telling me that our egg whites are all the way cooked and our egg yolk is still nice and runny. So I'll set it over here on a plate with a napkin on there. So we got our poached eggs, our jam, we got some bacon, our English muffin, then we're going to serve it with a little arugula, tomato, parmesan salad with a little bit of this balsamic glaze on it. Whoopsie! Alright, so now it is time to plate our eggs Benedict and see how we did. Got our English muffin. I'm just going to take some of that jam that we made earlier, and I'm just going to smear it on. I really like to add jam to this. I know it's a lot of people don't. I do, because I really like the sweetness it brings. It brings a nice kind of sweet and acidity because of the fresh lemons in here. I'm a big fan of it. So we're going to give it, you know, a nice little helping, nice little coating on there. We're going to put them up. Next, we're going to throw our little bits of bacon on top of that jam. Can never go wrong with bacon, you know. And break some up. Never too much bacon either. I mean, that's the beauty of bacon. Oh yeah. Alright, so next we're going to put our eggs on top. That's one. Oh. There we go. Got our eggs on top. Now I need a napkin. Alright. Next is getting our arugula salad all taken care of. Make that, there we go. Take a little bit of our arugula. Just gonna kind of place it on the side of the plate. Throw some tomatoes in there. I'm a really big fan of heirloom tomatoes. I really just like the color that they have. It's really nice. Kind of makes things look a little bit more vibrant. Next, we're going to sprinkle some of our Parmesan, freshly grated Parmesan. Then we're going to use our balsamic glaze. This is one of my favorite balsamic glazes I've run across. Get that out of the way. Come on, baby. Yeah, she thick. There we go. Yeah, this one's a little bit thicker than most, but I really like it. There we go. There she goes. Yeah, that's our balsamic glaze. Rinse off that spoon right quick. Now it's time for the moment of truth. Our hollandaise sauce. Since it's been a while since this has been cooked, sometimes it'll tend to get a little bit thicker than you want, and that happens. That's okay. But I think this is a little bit thicker than how I probably want it to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a little tiny bit of that water we were poaching our eggs in, just a little bit. I'm just going to add it in. Not much, just a little bit. And kind of give it a mix around in there. Yeah, that's a little bit better. You know, maybe just a smidgen more. There we go. Yep, and that's going to bring it right back to where we want it. So now we're going to pour our hollandaise sauce on our egg. Yeah. See that? It's nice, it's thick, but not too thick where it doesn't run off the sides like we want it to. Oh yeah. That is a beauty. Alright guys, it's the moment of truth. Let's see if our eggs are runny. Oh yeah. See about this one. Ooh, see, even I see it overcooked. Mistakes happen. Mistakes happen, my guys. Slightly overcooked here. This one's good though. Nice and runny.